Hi everybody, I'm so glad you can join me today. Today we're going to look at making these beautiful crepe paper roses. Now these roses seem to be popping up all over the place, whether it is wedding decor, bridal bouquets, or just to have around your house. These roses are making quite an appearance. And today I'm going to show you how easy it is to make one of these yourselves. So let's take a look at what the materials required are. So to make these roses, you're going to need a cutout of the templates. I've added a link in the description box at the bottom of this video to these templates. Now for each flower or each stalk, you'll need 3 leaves wired. If you're new to flower making and don't know how to do this, you can watch my video on how to wire petals and leaves. I've added a link right over here. You'll need 1 calyx and you're going to need 10 cuts of petals in a color of your choice. I've picked red this time, right? So let's put the templates aside. With your leaves, when you're wiring leaves, typically I normally keep the stem about 1.5 inches longer than the actual length of the leaf. This time around I've left them a little longer. Also, if you're going to be making a natural looking rose stem like this with like a 3-pronged leaf twig attached, what you need to do is have one stalk slightly longer than the other 2. And you'll see what we're going to do with these in a little while from now. You're also going to need wire for the main stalk of your flower and your usual craft supplies. A pencil to trace out your template, a pair of scissors to cut your paper. You're going to need glue, thread, wire cutters and pliers, and floral tape. Alright, so let's look at how we can make one of these for ourselves. We're going to start off with the wire for the stalk. You're going to start by bending the top tip, or any one tip rather, over to form something that looks like a hook, and then you're going to pinch that together. Flatten it out so that the tip, this little point, isn't sticking out, and what you're left with is something like this. The reason for this is when you've got this loop bent over, anything that you may tie to this end of the wire is actually going to stay put and not just slip off if the wire was just left straight the way it is. Alright? Now making this flower couldn't be simpler. We're going to start with the petals. Now the first petal you're going to leave as is, just like the way you've cut it. You're going to fold about 1/3 of it in on itself like this. Grab your stalk and about, say, 1/3 of the way up, that's the length you're going to keep the stalk at, and you're going to roll that over. You can then bend this petal outwards, this end of it a little, if you'd like. It adds a nice little interest to the center. Now, keeping this pinched over, we're going to tie this nice and secure. Like you'll see, when I'm tying flowers or petals, I like to make sure that the string is tied nice and tight. If it breaks, no problem, just continue where you left off. Just make sure, oops, I seem to be having a little bit of a okay, so what I've done is I've run the thread from the top to the bottom, okay, and then we're going to knot it up. So you loop your thread around, take it over your petal, pull. Another one. Loop your thread around over the petal and you're going to pull it. Okay? And that's it. So basically this petal shouldn't budge off your wire. If it moves, you've tied it too loose and you're going to have to tighten that, otherwise your flower is not going to stay on your stalk. Since we had all that breakage, I'm just going to trim these bits off. Alright, now for the rest of the petals, we're going to do something a little different. Each petal, you're going to grab the center, right, just under this V, and with your thumb and fingers on either side, you're going to gently pull that. What we're trying to do is cup that petal ever so little. See, and then you've got that little curve. It looks like it's the shape of a petal. You're not quite done here. What you need is your pair of scissors, and you're going to use the blunt edge to turn these petals, or the edges of these petals, outwards. And you can curl them a little, just roll them over with your finger if you like them. If you prefer the way they look like this, you can leave them open, but I'm going to roll them over. Alright, let's have a look at another one. So that's your petal cut. With your hands on either side of the petal, just under that V, you're going to pull gently. You don't want to rip your paper, but you want that petal to cup, like so. And using your pair of scissors, you're going to gently pull that upwards and over to curl it. Then using your fingers, you're going to roll that down. Okay, so each petal looks something like this. And you're going to repeat the same for all the rest of the cuts. When you finished forming the petals, we're going to start tying them up. Yeah. Now, the trick here is to make sure that every edge or join of the petal that you see here is tucked somewhere in the middle of the next petal. Yeah, that way you don't have gaps in the flower, but they're all nicely overlapping one another. Also, we're going to leave the centermost petal a little lower than the other ones and gradually increase the size of the petals. So all you're doing is turning this petal around just like that. Pinch that bottom a little and tie it up. Remember, you don't need the entire length of the petal for your flower. Roses are not really this long. You can afford to tie that up a little higher. Knot it by looping around the flower. There you have it. The next petal. We're going to make sure that this edge is somewhere in the center of the third petal. And tie the next one. And we're going to continue doing that for the rest of the petals. So again, we're going to make sure that these edges are covered up by the petal that we're adding next. So you already have a tiny bit of a rose. You can see the rose taking form rather. Now when you're tying, what I like to do is I like to hold a little slightly longer tail and then start rolling. That way I've got control. I know that that end is going nowhere, and I wrap the rest of the string or the thread around that tail. Okay, a couple of knots and you're done. We're going to continue the same thing for all the other petals. As the flower gets bigger, you'll notice that it's not possible to cover both edges with the next petal. That's fine. As long as you stick to covering one side and then keep overlapping as you tie, you should be all right. You can gradually increase the height of your petals as you're tying them by a really tiny bit to give it that look where the bud seems a little lower than the rest of the petals. And that's the last petal tied up. Look at that, how pretty is that? And that's as simple as it is to make one of these. Now we're just going to look at how to finish these off. We'll start with the leaves. Now each of these leaves, I'm going to try and get some veins drawn onto them to add a little more detail to it. Taking the blunt end of your scissors, just kind of gently draw some veins on the leaves. And we'll do that for the other two as well. You can leave the leaves as they are, you don't have to do this. I like adding a little more detail to the... There you go, it just takes a few extra seconds, but I think it adds that much more to it. Now, to assemble these, we're going to try and mimic the actual rose plant. So you'll notice that one leaf is usually a little higher, and then you have the two other leaves, the other two leaves a little lower than the topmost one. So that's what we're going to do. You're going to bend the leaves slightly outwards, so that you can do once this stalk has been attached to the flower. Then you're going to grab a little floral tape. Now my floral tape comes in rolls like this. I just cut it in half across the width to give me slightly more manageable strips for small jobs like this. You're going to start a little lower than the base of the leaf, and with your tape angled upwards, like you're going to roll. Now when you're using floral tape, it is important to make sure that you stretch a little as you're using it. Once you reach the base of the leaf, you're going to twirl that around a little in the same spot, and then angle the tape downwards, stretch as you go. The stretching releases some of these sticky bits on the tape so that the tape adheres to itself. And you're going to twirl in a down, holding it at a downward slant now till the rest of your stalk is covered. Okay, we're going to add the third leaf now. Now, we're going to add a little calyx to the bottom to cover up all these little bits of string. Okay, if you've got any super long ends, you can just snip them off, like so. You're going to grab your calyx and gently stretch that crepe paper. Remember, you don't want to tear it, you just want to stretch it a little so that it extends all the way around the flower at somewhat equal, these little ends need to be somewhat equidistant from one another. It doesn't have to be so because nature in all its glory is not very regular and measured. You'll notice a lot of irregularities when you see real flowers, and a little irregularity never hurt anyone. So once you're happy with the placement, okay, we're going to open that up, add a touch of glue because we're going to stick that on. You're also going to put a touch of glue on the inside of the calyx and on these tips. You don't want too much, just a tiny bit to hold it in place. Don't go crazy with the glue here. When you're happy with it, stick it down and pinch this button. It will be a little loose over here, but that's fine. Nothing to worry about because we're going to eventually tie that off as well. Yeah. The only reason we're tying this again is to make sure that it stays in place. Just the bottom looser end of the calyx. You don't have to take it all the way to the top. And when you're happy with that, just knot that around. There you go. Last bit, we're going to use the entire width of our floral tape. Snip off that untidy end. Again, remember we're going to start a little lower, angle that tape upwards and take it to the base of that flower. Hold it steady for a round or two at the same level, then angle your tape downwards and make sure you're overlapping as you turn that wire around. You're going to turn using your thumb and your forefinger over here. Don't forget to stretch the tape as you go. Go a little past the end of the wire, the tape automatically rips up. Okay. Now, all that's left to do is attach the leaves. You can decide where you think it looks best, at what height. And you're going to attach them the same way. If something like this happens, don't worry about it. Rip that piece off and we're going to go back and start again. There you go. A beautiful paper rose that you've made within minutes using basics like paper, a little wire, some glue and thread. When you make a few of these and stick them together, you can put them in a vase, you can tie them up in a nice little bunch and brighten someone's day. So go ahead, try your hand at making these beautiful roses. Remember, you can always make the roses a little bigger by adding more petals to it. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Go ahead and give these flowers a try. You'll see how easy they are for yourself. Also, subscribe for future video tutorials like these. We've got a lot in store for you. If you know of anyone who enjoys these kind of crafts, feel free to share this video with them too. I look forward to seeing you real soon again. Thank you for watching. Bye bye now.